Okay, this morning we talked on what? Problem. The solution that we're fixing to get into this afternoon. It's only as good as your understanding of the problem. If you don't really understand this, you will never do this the way it's supposed to be done. Now, I went to treatment twice. The first time I went, I really did not want to be there. I went to get people off of my ass. I had a probation officer on my ass. I had family. I had kids, an ex-wife. People were pushing me and prodding me to go to treatment. So this is what I told them. I'll go. I needed a break anyway. Now, I go. They explained this to me. I got the words, but I really didn't get
the idea.
I understood this part. Anybody who has it will understand it. What went right over my head was that. This is what I thought. Just don't put that here. I'll never set that off. Really didn't understand how powerful this thing was. Now, people who just get this part and don't really understand this, the only thing they will do over here is go to meetings. If you have the obsession to you, then you just go to meetings. You're going to keep the obsession. Now, if somebody asked you, how many AAs are there? What would you say? Okay, he says a bunch. What would you say? He says 2. What would you say? 2. What would you say? Well, you can't answer. What would you say? 1, 2. Look, there are 2 AAs. There is the fellowship in AA that is going to the meetings. And what the meetings do, they support it. Now, how many times you been to treatment? A bunch. Yeah. Now, every time you come out of treatment, do you go to some of these? Do you ever do this? I didn't ask. That's not what I asked you if you attempted to. I attempted to be president of the United States, and I'm not. Okay. Why won't you do this and this? Because you don't really understand that. Look, I'm telling you, if you get nothing else out of this afternoon, I want you to listen to this. Most of y'all, when we explain the allergy and we tell you every time you put one in, it sets off a craving and you end up on. How many of y'all go, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah. But when it comes to this, it goes whoop, right over your head. How many of y'all have been to treatment before? How many of y'all have gotten out of treatment and went to some meetings, but never did the steps? Now, the solution is only as good as your understanding of. You don't really get this. You'll never get this. Now, second time in treatment, they start explaining this, and it's like a little window opened up of the truth. And I saw it. And this is what I saw. I was absolutely screwed if something didn't give here. If something didn't give here, I was gonna keep putting. That was gonna keep getting worse, worse. And I didn't think they could get any worse, but I'm sure they would have had. Now, when I came over here and started to take the steps, now, we call this the fellowship, we call this the program. They're two different things. The fellowship is in me. Now, where do you think the program of AA is?
Where do I think it is?
Where do you think it is?
Book.
Okay. What book?
This book.
This what book?
Alcohol Anonymous.
That book? Okay. Where in the book?
Whole thing.
No. Let me see your books that you ain't gonna use. Look, how many of y'all, when we give you this book, okay, we tell you this is what? The big book. And the reason we tell you that is because it's a book and the bitch is big. So they call it a big book. Now, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is in the first 103 pages of this book. This is the directions for the steps. Now, the rest of this is crap. That's what this is. Now, is this good crap? It is good crap, but it is crap. This is the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, would you rather do this program or yours?
That program.
That's what you say. Now, in order for you to do this program, do you know what you have to give up on?
Selfishness.
Your program. Because your program and this program are like oil and water. They don't mix. Now, how many of y'all, okay, look up here. He's just going to walk. Look up here. How many of y'all try to interject your program into this one? How many of y'all try to make yours and this one work? It'll never happen. Because your program and this program are like oil and water. And when you put oil and water together, they automatically separate. If you try to inject your program into this one, you will separate yourself from this program. And this program will separate you from your program. Now, what's your first name? Amber. Let's say Amber made a cheesecake. And she brought it up here and I took a bite of it, which I never would. And I said, girl, that is the best cheesecake I have ever eaten. So Amber said, do you want me to give you the recipe? I said, yeah, write it down for me. So she writes a recipe, exactly how to make that cheesecake. And she gives it to me. Now, with my keen intellectual mind that I have, I'm going to make a better cheesecake. Her first suggestion says to grease a cake pan. I'm hungry. I ain't got time for that shit. I just get a cake pan. Her second direction says add 2 eggs and 1 cup of sugar. I like shit sweet. I put 3 eggs and 2 cups of sugar. Her third direction says blend it with the blender for 7 minutes. Now, what guy has a blender? So I get a spoon and I slop it around for about 5 minutes. Her last direction says bake it at 350 for 12 minutes. I broil it at 500 degrees for 4 minutes. I pull it out, I take a bite of it, I spit it out, and I go, that damn girl, she gave me the wrong recipe. Now, did she give me the wrong recipe? I just couldn't follow. Precise, Clear cut direction. Now, how many times have you had the recipe? No. And you can't follow precise, clear cut, because you are a genius. And you know about. Now, somebody like me, I have to be thoroughly convinced that my program will never, ever, ever work before I would try this one. Now, how many of y'all have tried to make yours work? Somehow, some way, someday you say, this is how. And every time you fall flat on your damn face. Now, the fellowship is in. The directions for the steps are in the first 103 pages of. Now, the fellowship supports the steps. Change me. If you're not ready to change, this won't. Now, every time you get ready to put this in, where does that thought come from? Where does the thought come from? Where does that center? Okay, so every time you get ready to put that in, that thought comes from this box, right? It don't come from your little toe, does it? Your personality. Where does it center? In the same box, not in your little toe, huh? Now, what the steps do, they will give you a spiritual awakening or a personality. They're the same thing. Now, if you got up and you left today, you would leave with. Now, if you come in here and you start taking the steps, a new personality is going to start coming in and pushing the old one. And when the old one starts to go, guess what goes with it? That's right. See, most of y'all are so in love with yourself. It's not you can't change. You won't. I'm telling you, if you stay the same, you will use again. There's no doubt about it. Now, the solution is only as good as your understanding of. If you don't see how these two things work together, you will never do this. Now, how many of y'all, this is going to make sure you keep doing this. And this is going to destroy you in the process. How many of y'all, that's been your MO? This tells you to do this, and this is destroying you in the process. Now, if I'm powerless, Stevie Wonder could see it's going to take. Look, if you're here, there's no way you could be here. Now watch this shit. If you here, your ass is not here. With the exception of maybe Madison, because he's been here a while. Now, how long you been here? You are not here. Since you here, you are. Look, nobody comes through the gates at Woodlake and says this. You know, I think I'm going to go to Woodlake. Shit's going marvelous for me. Did you say that? If you're sitting in here, something is up with you. Seriously, something is up with you. Now, step 2 says came to believe. Believe what? Now, when somebody talks to you about a power greater than yourself, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? God. What about you?
Family.
Family?
God.
Look, step 2, nowhere in it does it say nowhere. It says a power greater than you. Now, how many of y'all, if you were anything like me when I came in here, I had a hard time believing God wanted to have anything to do with me, especially after what I had done to his other children. Now, I know none of y'all in here are like that. Some people who really knew what they were talking about told me, take the God idea and just set it to the side. I had no problem doing that. I had been doing it for about 27 years, and I was good at it. Now, how many of y'all are struggling with this? If you weren't, you wouldn't be in here. Now, those people told me, take this word and add you another O in there. Just start doing good. If you're supposed to be up at a certain time, be up. You're supposed to put a cigarette in the butt can, put it in. If you're supposed to make your bed, make your damn. Just start doing. Now, what do you believe? See, look, we don't want to know what you think you know or what you believe or somebody else taught you to believe. What do you believe? Now, this word is a powerful ass word. What you believe is exactly what you're going to do. Now, if somebody believes something strong enough, they will make a decision. They will carry out their decision with action, and they will get. Now, once somebody gets results, they have, and what faith means is to know. Now, believing and faith are two completely different things. They are so far different that most of y'all think they're the same thing. Everything you do starts with a simple belief. Now, the first time I ever heard the word drugs and alcohol, when it entered my ear, at that split second, I did not use. It got up in here and it rattled around long enough where I believed those people who told me, if you put this in you, it'll change the way you feel. Now, based on that belief, I had never used, I did not know, but that belief became strong enough where I made the decision to go get some. I took, got it, put it in my body, and I got. Now, the second time I used, I didn't believe what it could do. I knew. Now, how many of y'all have never did this, but you know it won't work? Now, is that ignorant or what? You've never done it, but you know it don't work. The first time you had fentanyl in your hand, did you go, I don't fucking believe this is going to work? You didn't do that, huh? Now, did you believe strong enough? You went and got the shit and put it in you, and you got. Now, the second time you used fentanyl, did you believe or did you know what it could do? Now, Have you ever did this? So you don't. Now, do you have to know right now? No, because you can't. You just have to or be willing. Now, when they started talking to me, this is what I believed. I didn't know, but I believed I would be better off here than here. Now, if you okay with the results you get in here, I'm good with it. I'm good with them too. If you good with the results you get, I'm good too. But this is what I know about you. Deep down, you're dying. And you won't tell anybody, will you? If somebody could open you up and look inside, they would go, wouldn't they? That ain't no possible. That's why you don't want to look there. I'm telling you, what you believe is what you're going to do. Now, I want you to stay with me. I want you to open your mind up. There's nothing you're not going to lose much. Just open up. Now, what do you believe when it comes to God? Where do you believe God is? Huh? You believe something. I didn't ask you about knowing. I said believe it. Where were you taught to believe God is? Huh? In heaven. Where do you believe God is? Okay, all around you. So everywhere. You better get up. You sitting on his ass in. Look, how many of y'all have always believed in God what somebody tried to teach you? You never had your own conception of God. You always had somebody else's. Now, by having somebody else's conception of God, does it seem pretty impersonal? It doesn't seem very personal, huh? I used to have people tell me I have a personal relationship with God, and I would go, yeah, fucking right. I'm sure you do. How many of y'all have never had your own conception of God? Now, this word, believe, it is a powerful ass word. It's so powerful and it's so important in this process that they made one whole chapter and devoted it to the power of believing. It's called We Agnostics. That whole chapter deals with one thing, the power of believing. Now, how many of y'all have ever heard of Christopher Columbus? They still teach that shit in school? Huh? He invented the airplane, right? What? What'd he do? Sailed around the ocean. All right, that's good enough. Look, how many of y'all know Columbus was one of us? He had to be. He had 3 fucking ships and they were all filled with booze. Now, Columbus walked around town and told people the world is round. Everybody else said, no, the bitch is flat. Every time they would see Columbus, they would say, here comes that crazy guy, that round world guy. He's crazy. Now, Columbus told people, I'm going to go east by sailing west. That's a drunk statement. When Columbus landed, he did not know where he was at. That's a drunk. When he got back, he didn't know where he had been. That's a drunk, huh? What really made him an alcoholic, a woman financed the whole trip, not once, but twice. Now, the first time Columbus sailed around the world, he did not know it was round. He just simply, now, the first time he sailed, before he took off, all the ships were loaded. They were ready to go. He walks all around town looking for one special sailor, and he finds him. He's about 7'4", and he had a wingspan of about 10 foot. He hired him on the spot. The first day they're out, it started getting dark. He brought him to the front of the ship. He said, I want you to take this lantern, and I want you to hold it out as far as you can. And if you see the edge of this son of a bitch, you holler. Because he did not. He just leaves. Now, the second time Columbus sailed, he did not bring that sailor with him. Because the second time he sailed, he knew. Now, we keep beating a dead horse here. We're trying to get you to see the difference between this. They're on two different ends of the spectrum. How many of y'all will sit in here and swear this will never work for you, but you've never done it? How would you know? Now, believe, decide, action, results, faith. This little process, you use it in everything you do. You may not realize it, but everything you do starts with a simple belief. Now, how many of y'all have ever heard of the Wright brothers? They actually built the first contraption that flew. Now, in We Agnostics, they talk about Columbus. They talk about the Wright brothers. I'm giving you examples of the power of believing. The first time I was introduced to the big book, that shit went right over my. This was what I said. What the hell does Columbus and the Wright brothers have to do with me not smoking crack? I didn't really get what they were coming at me with. That's why I'm taking my time and really trying to explain it to you. They're trying to teach you the power of. Now, they had a carpenter that walked this earth thousands of years ago. His name was Jesus. He taught people through parables. He tried to teach you something by something you already knew. That's why they used Columbus. You already knew about. I mean, y'all know about the Wright brothers. They're trying to teach you something by something you should already know. Now, before the Wright brothers came along, they had a guy. He was an aeronautical genius. His name was Professor Langley. They named an Air Force base after him, called Langley Air Force Base. When Professor Langley built his little contraption to fly, it's sitting on the front of start of the runway. Back then, they didn't have the internet. They called them news wires. They sent out a news wire and said, Professor Langley is fixing to fly this contraption. About 500 newspaper men showed up. Now, for it to be a successful flight, it had to go down the runway, it had to get up, it had to make a lap and land. Now, Professor Langley's contraption, it goes down the runway. The bitch didn't go up. It went off the end of the runway and it sank in the Potomac Lake. All those newspaper men the next day wrote this: man will never fly. If Professor Langley couldn't do it, God reserved that right for the birds. Now, The Wright brothers come along after that. They were not aeronautical geniuses. They were actually high school dropouts. Fucking bicycle mechanics. It's hard to believe a bicycle mechanic can build a contraption that would fly after Langley couldn't. And we're only asking you to stay sober. Now, the Wright brothers have their contraption at the front at the beginning of the runway. They send the same news wire out. Not one of those newspaper men showed up. Not one of them. The Wright brothers contraption goes down the runway. It gets up. It makes a lap at Kitty Hawk, and it lands. Man's first successful flight. The next day, none of those newspaper men would print it. Not one of them. Because if they did, it would prove them. See, most of y'all won't try this because it's going to prove all your little fucking theories wrong. This is one time I was glad to be proved dead ass wrong. See, I used to talk shit about people who had their shit together. I know none of y'all in here like that. And the reason I talked about it because I knew I would never do that. When I was coming up in my neighborhood, they had two guys, they were brothers. Up till we were probably about 10, we were good friends. Around 10, their life sort of went this way and mine went. I would see them in the neighborhood from time to time, and I'd say, man, how y'all doing? They'd go, man, Kevin, we doing great. God's really working in our life. And I'd go, man, that's so fucking good for you. They would walk off, and I would walk off, and I would go, Tim, pour some bitches. And I'm sure they said the same thing. They were dead on the money, right? And I couldn't have been more wrong than wrong could be. See, and that's one of the reasons I didn't want to try this because it would prove all my little theories and ideas wrong. How many of y'all are so fucking far off the mark? It's pathetic. It's pathetic. But you walk around like you got your shit together. You think everybody else is dumb as a box of rocks, and you are the only one who has your shit together. Now, when you were in kindergarten, physics, did you stand up and tell the class, when I grow up, I want to be a patient at Woodlake? No. You didn't say that, huh? No. Now, if you would have told me, I did tell the kindergarten class when I grew up I wanted to be a patient at Woodlake. You know what I would tell you? I wouldn't change a fucking thing. It's working. But you didn't say that, did you? So what I would tell you is what you're doing, your ideas, your beliefs, they not working. Most of y'all think this is about being sober. It's not about being sober. It's about changing. So you won't find it necessary to have to put something in you to change the way you feel. The exciting part about recovery is not being sober. The exciting part is changing. That's the exciting part. And that's why most of y'all don't stay in it, because you're just sober. Same miserable little person. You're just sober. Because all y'all want to do is take the easier, softer way and go to. See, when it comes to really doing the work, most of y'all don't want nothing to do with that. I'm not going to do that. Well, if you're not going to do that, you're going to do that. Now, Madison, how many choices do you see up here? Huh? I would say you got one, two choices. That's what I would say. Now, how many of y'all don't like either one? Do you want to go back and do fentanyl and just lead a long, slow, miserable death? But you really didn't want to do this when you came in, did you? Right? So, don't want that, and don't want that. And that's the only choices you got. Look, 23 years later, I still have the same two choices I had when I first came into treatment. I can go back here or I can stay here. You're sort of like this. You can come here or stay here. But you have the same two choices I do. Now, do you know? Do you know what this will get you?
Yes.
Yeah, fuck yeah, you there. You have arrived. Now, do you know what this will get you?
No.
You ain't got a clue, do you? Now, is this what you want?
No.
Then it really leaves you one choice. Look, I'm telling you, when y'all come into Woodlake, after we detox you and this bitch comes on, you think you have a bunch of choices and decisions to make. When you don't, you have two choices. Stay here, come here. And I know most of y'all are special and different. And you're not like the rest of these people in here. Matt, the last time you got out of here, did you think you had a bunch of choices and decisions to make? Did you stay here, come here? Yeah. So today, you have the same two. Stay there. You're well on your way here. The rest of his life, he's going to have the same two. Now, should have listened to this. Now, do you know what this will get you? Huh? Is that what you want? Okay. Now, I want you to listen to the results I got from this, because most of y'all are getting the same ones. I lost. Look, before I tell you what happened, if you would have seen me in the most wanted section of the Baton Rouge newspaper, you would have thought I was raised by a bunch of heathens. And I come from a damn good family. I lost my family. This is what they told me. If you show up on our property, I'm going to have you arrested and escorted in cuffs off my property. I lost my daughters. You listening? Something I never thought would happen. See, that first time I was in treatment, guess what I still had? I lost my freedom. I lost my job, my house, my cars, and I love some cars. I lost my dog. I got the bitch out the pound and I fed her with a bottle. When I got to treatment the second time, the best place I could find to sleep was under a bridge. Nobody would let me stay on the couch. Nobody wanted me around. Now, how many of y'all, if you're not there, you're well on your way? See, are you well on your way of running your family off? Huh? That you take for granted? Are you about to lose your freedom? How many of y'all It's starting. And once it starts, it happens quick, real quick. And it happens so quick, you go, oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, hold on a minute. Now, you take somebody like me who comes in a place like this, because where I went to treat, it was big book based. What you're getting here is big book based in this room. You are getting the real deal. Most of y'all don't have a clue what you're getting here. Now, as a result of not doing that and doing that, I went to treatment the second time for 28 days. And I stayed at that facility for almost 14 years. And I became the clinical director of the treatment center I went to as a client. Now, I don't know about you, but that's some pretty good results for somebody like. Now, you may not be like me. I don't know. I am a convicted, not one, two governors of the great state of Louisiana, a Republican and a damn Democrat. Both appointed me to a state board that licensed all the substance abuse counselors in this state. That don't happen. Convicted, not supposed to get appointed to state boards. I had a contract with the Department of Corrections. That's not supposed to happen. I'll go in a penitentiary, bring this, what you're getting here, in there, and leave the same damn night. Now, I don't know about you, but that's some pretty good results from doing this and not doing that. Now, material wise, I came from under the bridge. Material wise, been real good to me. I got some shit today. Now, all that stuff is pretty good, would you say? For somebody like me. You want to hear the good shit now? Because that was just okay shit. You want to hear the good shit? I'm a son. I'm a son of my parent today. The same man who told me, you show up on my property, I will have you locked up. I am the executor of his shit today. I say what happens when he goes. Now, I don't know about you, Madison, but that's a pretty good result, somebody like me, would you say? I am a brother. I'm a brother to my remaining sibling I have. I am an uncle to my nieces and nephews. And to show you how God's got a funny sense of humor, at 63, I have a 4-year-old. So he has given me another shot at raising a kid the right way. And no matter what the hell y'all hear and read on Facebook, I'm a husband to my wife today. Now, I don't know about you, but that's some pretty good results for somebody like me. How many of y'all come in here thinking y'all that shit and you wouldn't make pimple on a father's behind? How many of y'all? Y'all think y'all something that you really not? but the way you actually think, that's what you are. See, if somebody else did the same shit to your family that you do to them, you wouldn't stand for it. If somebody made your mama cry herself to sleep at night, what would you do to them? Why are you laughing at that shit? Oh, am I fucking seeing shit? Why are you laughing at that? What would you do? Because you know, when I talk to her, I can see it in her eyes. Something that never even is registered in your mind. And I don't even know her. You're the one supposed to be seeing that, not me. Most of y'all are so self-centered. You don't comprehend nothing like that. Nothing. Now, this right here, when I came in here, the only thing I wanted was for this to be removed. I started drinking and drugging at around 11. I got sober at 39. You count them up. It's a lot of years. And I never thought this would be gone. And I tried everything so I wouldn't have to do that shit. Now, I want you to think about what I just said. I tried everything. I tried to move. I tried changing friends, jobs, relationships, getting in them, getting out of them, changing my fucking underwear. Tried everything because I did not want none of that action. I know none of y'all in here are like that. Now, when I'm backed in a corner and I have nothing left to try, I say, hey, I'm going to give it a shot. Not a shot, a shot. When I actually do this, it turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. The last thing I wanted to try turned out the best thing that ever happened. So what that tells me is I do not know what's good for me. Every time y'all do what y'all think's good for you, does it turn out to be a damn disaster? Yes. So maybe, just maybe, you might want to start doing some shit you don't want to do. Turn y'all's big books to page 44. On page 44, the name of the chapter is called We Agnostics. Now, when you see the word we in this book, they're not talking about you yet. You're not a part of we. To be part of we, you would have to have taken the steps, tapped into that power, and recovered. So you're not a part of we yet. Now, I want you to listen to this. Who can join our fellowship? Anyone. Any jackass in the world. The Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous is some of the most mixed up, screwed up ass people in the world. Because we don't discriminate. Anybody. You say you're a member of the Fellowship of AA, you in. Now, who can be a part of recovery? The people who have taken the steps and recovered. Now, can you be in the fellowship and not in recovery? Yeah, fuck yeah. And that's what most of y'all do. You never become a part of we. You just go to some damn. You keep. You use again, and this is what you say. Them steps don't work. Fuck would you know? You've never done the steps. Have you? Have you? Have you? They'll come to treatment. and you read about them, but you ain't never done them. All right, in the big book, here we go. It says in the preceding chapter, that would be the doctor's opinion, Bill's story, there is a solution, and moral and alcoholism. 4 chapters. You have learned something of alcoholism. Now, what they've been trying to do in the first 4 chapters is tell you about that. And now, they're going to take about 4 sentences and they're going to sum up 4 chapters so we don't leave your ass behind. But some of us are slow. Back in the book, it says, we hope we had made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non-alcoholic. If when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely. Look up here. That is, or if when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take. Look up here. That is, now they summed up 4 chapters to tell you, hey, you got a damn mental obsession coupled with that has rendered your ass. And if you get that point, then you might be interested in the main part of the program. It says if that be the case, if what's the case? If you have this obsession and this allergy, if that's the case, it says you are suffering. And boy, are you suffering. How many of y'all? This shit has gotten so bad. And inside, your ass dead. And you won't say a word. And somebody will ask you, how you doing, girl? And what do you say? You say, I'm fine. I'm good. How you doing? Because you don't want nobody to know how your ass really feels, do you? I mean, what would they think of me? They'd be no worse than what they already think. If that be the case, you suffering from an illness, which only a spiritual awakening will conquer. Now, how does somebody like Kevin have a spiritual awakening? By going to the meetings or by taking the steps? Oh, bullshit. This is where I recover. And once I do, come in here and I support newcomers. And I try to get them to come over here and pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools that were laid at my feet. Because I know if they don't, they're going to stay. They're going to put one back in. We know what happens. Back in the book. To one who feels she is an atheist or an agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. Now, if somebody asked you, if somebody said to you, hey, what's a spiritual awakening? What would you say? Huh? I don't know. Well, you might want to know. That's what we came here for. What would you say?
Someone who finds God, finds faith.
Well, God ain't lost. God been here a long fucking time. Look, does a spiritual awakening mean y'all are going to become nuns? We pray every night that never happens. Never, ever. Does it mean y'all going to join the church and help the Pope hand out communion on Sunday? We sure as hell hope that don't happen. A spiritual awakening is nothing more and nothing less the personality change. It means you're going to hear that pop. Your head is going to exit your butthole. And instead of seeing the darkness of self, you're going to start to see the sunlight of the Spirit. That's that little voice that tells you right from wrong, that you've heard all your life that you will not listen to. Look, how many of y'all look for God every damn where except where He actually is? Now, we're going to talk about what you believe. Where do you believe God is? Your heart ain't nothing but a big old muscle that pumps blood. Where do you believe God is? Where do you believe He is? Look, how many of y'all were taught something like this? God is in heaven, and He watches everything you do. Now, I'm probably about 6 or 7 years old, and my parents started to use God as a babysitter. And they told me, God's in heaven, and He's watching everything that you do. And I'm thinking, well, that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Now, this was my conception of God at about 6 years old. He's up on this cloud. He's got long hair, a beard. He's got this white robe on. He's got this big old concrete tablet in front of him. He got a chisel in this hand and a hammer in this one. And every time I did something wrong, he chiseled that shit out. Now, when I got about 10, my conception, it grew a little bit. And this was my conception at 10. You got to be tired of fucking chiseling. Now, I want you to think about this. How many of y'all still have the same conception of God today that you had as a little punk ass kid? Now, my conception of God, He was in heaven watching everything I did. Physically, I keep growing. I hit 14, 16, 18. I'm living in an adult world now, and I have the conception of God of a little baby old kid. Small wonder it seemed pretty inadequate, huh? Now, today, when I came in here, I start growing again spiritually. My conception of God starts to grow by leaps and bounds, and it catches up with my physical being. Now I got something that works. If you think about what I said, most of y'all still have the same conception of God that you had as a little bitty boy. When you start to put drugs and alcohol in you, whatever age you started, you can take a few years off or add a few years on. Somewhere in that time frame, you quit growing emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Now, I started using that about 11. When I came in here, that's about the conception of God I had, like a little 11-year-old boy. How old were you when you first started using? We're going to take a few years off of you then. Have you been acting and pulling some 12-year-old shit? How old? Yeah, we really going to take some off of you. Have you been acting like a little 15-year-old punk-ass girl? How old? Yeah. Have you been pulling some 14-year-old shit? See, wherever you started using, you cease growing emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Treatment centers are full. 17, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. I've had them 80-year-old bodies with their minds and emotions. Little bitty kids. But you want people to treat you like an adult. Now, turn your big book to page 55. Before we start reading, they got a little joke When God created everything, they say it took him about 7 days. He worked quick. So he finishes everything, and the angels ask God, where do you want us to put you? The angels told God, we're going to build you a kingdom up on the highest mountain. God thought a minute. He said, no, don't put me up there. He said, man will eventually get up there and find me and ruin everything. So the angels told God, so we're going to put you at the bottom of the ocean. We'll build you a kingdom down there. God thought about it a minute. He said, nah, don't put me down there either. They'll eventually get down there and find me and ruin everything. So the angel said, well, God, where do you want us to put you in all this? God thought of me. He said, I tell you what, put me deep down in every man, woman, and child. They will never look there. How many of y'all look for God in everything and everywhere? Money, drugs, relationships. You never look for God where he's actually at. And he's deep down within you. And he's never left. You don't have to find him. He's not lost. He's been here a long time. Now, when you get ready to do something wrong, right? Which is quite often, and you know it's wrong, do you hear a little voice say, girl, don't do that? Now, if it's something that you really want to do, right? Do you block that voice out? And do what? And when you do what you want to do, knowing it's wrong, do you normally face consequences down the line? And when the consequences start hitting, does that voice come back louder a second time and say, you dumbass, I told you not to do that? All right. What you call that voice? Huh? Most people do. I'll prove to you it's not your conscience. I'll prove it to you. The first time you hear that voice say, hey, girl, don't do that, has it always been right? Every single time, huh? So that proves there's no way it could be your conscience. Because there's only one entity in this universe that's always right. That is the fundamental idea of God. And when you block that voice out and do what you want, that's your conscience. And that's why your ass is sitting. Now, if we can get that out of the way, what you want to do, you would start listening to that first voice. Would your life take on a whole new meaning? That's what the steps do, remove. So you can tap in. What'd you want to be when you was growing up? Singer, what'd you want to be? What'd you want to be? Veterinarian? What? Yeah, you said that, huh? What'd you want to be, sir? What'd you want to be? You're the only one that could know. What'd you want to be? What'd you want to be? Now, let's just say for shits and giggles, every time you heard that voice say, hey, girl, don't do that. Let's say you'd have listened to it, right? What are the chances you would have had the opportunity to be a singer? Right? A nurse. When you, every time you heard that first voice tell you, hey man, don't do that. If you would have listened to it every single time, what are the chances you would have had the opportunity to be a chiropractor? Huh? Pretty good. You know who put that idea in your head? Huh? Huh? Yeah. That's why when you got ready to stray from the path, he said, hey, dumbass, don't do that. But you won't. Listen. And when your life don't go the way you want, you get mad at God. And he's going, look, I'm trying to lead you. Your ass just won't listen. Look, I want you to close your books. We're getting you ready for tomorrow. I want you to listen to this, Linda. Tomorrow, when you come in here, we're going to be talking about this. Because this is what blocks you from this. You are always doing what you want to do, when you want to do it, and how you want to do it. Now, the steps, they don't remove the obsession. They don't get you sober. They don't keep you sober. What the steps do is remove so you can tap into some. And this is what removes. This is what makes me a husband, a father, a son, a brother. If you had the power to do that shit, you wouldn't be sitting in. Now, when they started talking to me about stuff like that, I started to get a little interested in some. I wanted all that stuff. I just didn't want to do what they said was necessary to get it because I knew everything. Now, how many of y'all have ever said this? I'm going to get my shit together. And you did for about a fucking day, maybe a week, but you never can sustain it. And the reason you can't sustain it is because the needed is not there. You keep trying on your own power, and you don't have that power. One more time, give me your book since you ain't going to use it. If somebody asked you, do you know the best-selling book that's ever been put on paper? What would you say?
No. Oh, yeah, the Bible.
Yeah. I know you ain't heard this in a while, but you're right. Now, do you know why it's the best-selling book? The most spiritual book that's ever been put on paper. Do you know the second best-selling book that's ever been put on paper? You know why? It's the second most spiritual book that's ever been put on paper. This is the dumbass's version of the bigger book. That's why we have presented it to you.
Thank you.
Look, how many of y'all really don't have a clue what that book's about? You come in here and you think it's about alcoholism, don't you? Because it's titled Alcoholics Anonymous. They fooled your ass. Now, do they talk about alcoholism in the beginning of the book? They do. And they do it for one reason. To get you to see where you're really at. Because if you ever see it, that's when they spring the main purpose of the book on you. But they know you won't be interested in that until you see where you're really at. Most of y'all never see where you're really at, so you're never interested in this. And you keep coming in and out of these institutions. And these institutions, they help you. So you start ending up in other institutions. Do y'all know this is the Taj Mahal of institutions? You're going to start showing up in other ones, and you're not going to like it. And most of y'all ain't going to fare well. And you're going to say, wish I could listen to that asshole. He sure was a dickhead. Comments? Questions? Y'all pack up, but do not stop at that desk. Do not stop at that office. Y'all pack up and y'all head to y'all's houses.